Welcome back to another episode of What a Fuster Cluck. I am your host, Lolita Keys, and on this week's episode, we will be talking about the Epstein file, congressional chaos, all the way to the halftime controversy. We continue to be a nation divided by narratives, but united by outrage. In this episode, I'm going to break down two of the most divisive media story headlines of the past week. Number one, Attorney General Pam Bondi's explosive House Judiciary Committee testimony on the Department of Justice's release of the Epstein files, and the cultural firestorm surrounding Bad Bunny's Super Bowl halftime show versus the TPUSA's alternative event. I'm going to cover both what the left and the right are saying and how each side is framing these stories to fit their narratives and what it means when serious issues ranging from government transparency to national culture become ammunition in a culture war. At the end, I'm going to share my honest take on what I believe are the hypocrisies and how we can all, again, try to find that more thoughtful, less propagandized middle ground. Two questions I want to focus on in this episode. Number one, why so much outrage over the DOJ transparency on the Epstein files? And two, why did a music performance at the biggest sporting event in the United States of America become a partisan battleground? Let's start with the first question and jump right into Pam Bondi and the Epstein files. What actually happened? A little bit of background on the situation. So the DOJ, the Department of Justice, recently released more than 3 million pages of documents tied to the Jeffrey Epstein investigation under the Epstein Files Transparency Act. This is according to the New York Post. The filings have reignited scrutiny over who was mentioned and how the material was redacted. Let's dive into the Democratic Party's perspectives. Key arguments and headlines. Number one, lack of transparency and accountability. Many Democrats have criticized Pam Bondi for not fully releasing unredacted files and for inconsistent redactions that exposed victim identities but protected powerful figures. I agree with this completely. Demand for apologies and justice for survivors. Democratic lawmakers, in particular, Representative Pramila Jayapal, pressed Bondi during the hearing and asked her to face and apologize to the Epstein victims who were present at the hearing. Now, obviously, we would have liked to see her turn around and apologize, but I would ask you to keep in mind that that is not her role during this kind of a hearing. It is not her role to turn around and apologize. Doing that admits fault, which obviously she's not going to do. I'm not arguing about whether that's right or wrong. I'm arguing about the potential legalities of it all. And so, of course, the left ran with this headline that she wouldn't turn and face the victims of Epstein and she wouldn't apologize. Again, on a human level, would I have liked to see her do that? Yes. Given the context and the situation that she was in, was it something that she was going to do? Absolutely not. Accusations of cover-up and abuse of power. Representative Jamie Raskin accused Bondi of participating in a cover-up and weaponizing the DOJ and personal attacks and aggressive testimony. Bondi's response, at times laced with insults and refusal to directly answer the questions, fueled left-leaning criticism of disrespect and evasion. Now let's jump into what the Republicans are saying about this. Defense of Bondi and praise for releasing the files. Of course, Republicans on the Judiciary Committee praised Bondi for fulfilling the law's requirements and criticized Democrats for focusing on partisan narratives. Thomas Massie, who I love, by the way, Thomas Massie's critique of redactions. So even some Republicans, like Representative Thomas Massie, who was really, honestly, more of a libertarian, criticized the redactions as a disservice to survivors. And of course, accusations that Democrats are politicizing the issue. Okay, as if Republicans don't do this too. So Bondi and other Republicans asserted Democrats are using the Epstein files as a talking point against the Trump administration and the DOJ. Some of the broader headlines and media reactions, conservative outlets are highlighting the media mishandling and polarization and politicization of the hearing. Left-leaning commentators, including TV panel shows, lambasted Bondi's performance and her demeanor. And Super Bowl aired commercial by Epstein survivors called for the release of files still withheld. Obviously, a very powerful commercial that was probably really impactful to a lot of people who still have the Epstein files front and center, as many of us should. Now, the interesting thing about the conspiracy theories floating around, even before any of this got released, people would call you crazy. They would say you were nuts, that like none of this is true. Our government loves us. They're here to support us. There is no craziness going on out there. But we all know now this is all coming to light. So all the people out there who were beating the drum on this for many years, including Alex Jones, a rather controversial figure, I know, but there are many out there who have been beating the drum on the Epstein files for many years. And there are many people who, even post his 2008 conviction, still went on to do business with this man, because it's all about the money, ladies and gentlemen. It's all about the money. It's never about the kids. It's never about the safety and well-being of the women. The depths of evil that people will go to for control go far beyond what an average normal person would consider to be anything that they would ever participate in or consider doing whatsoever. When we're talking millions, sometimes billions of dollars, there's a lot that people in positions of power would do to hang on to that. And I think that's become more evident as people have started to really dig into what they are seeing in the Epstein files. If you haven't heard, things like using code words like pizza and grape soda, as if all of a sudden there's this multitude of adult men, adult multi-millionaire, multi-billionaire men who can eat any food or drink any drink they want in the world. And all of a sudden they're obsessed with grape soda and pizza. The whole situation is honestly just gross. And let me give you my thoughts on it. Number one, I think it's quite hysterical that either side would be trying to politicize this against another side, as if anyone's hands are clean in this situation. I guarantee you, if someone went toe to toe, blow for blow with what's actually in those files, we would see quite clearly that there's enough blame to go around on both sides of the aisle. So the fact that the media is trying to convince you that one side is worse than the other when it comes to the Epstein files is, in and of itself, again, just another way that they're trying to keep you propagandized and keep you married to their ideology and on their side, which is ridiculous. If we don't start coming together as a country and finding a middle ground and stop with the constant battling between right and left, there is honestly, I mean, really, how is there any hope for the future? Each administration coming in, coming out, is going to be the same amount of this ridiculous drama. Now, my thoughts on Pam Bondi's testimony. First of all, get her out. Okay. I'm going to offend a lot of women probably by what I'm about to say, but she grossly disappointed me in that hearing. She was kind of unhinged, wildly emotional. Keep it together, Blanche. Okay. You are the Attorney General of the United States of America, up there talking like and acting like just a crazy female, quite frankly. You fit the stereotype. You fit the stereotype. You fit the bill. And so I just couldn't take her seriously, even if she did have something good to say in those hearings. One of the things I heard, and feel free to fact check me on this, I have not fact checked this, but one of the things I heard is that somewhere during the trial, she actually started going into the search history of the people who she gave access to the files to. And in doing that was kind of able to out them. Like, why are you looking for this person or yourself? Like, what do you have to hide? What are you worried about? But, regardless of any of the good points that she had, they were completely overshadowed when she started making ridiculous comments, like saying things to people like, you have Trump derangement syndrome, and just a litany of other ridiculous, honestly ridiculous shit that she said that was just kind of unbearable for me to listen to. Now, again, I know I probably am going to offend a lot of women by saying this, but she is not the right person to be in that role. I honestly almost feel bad for her, because this is her job. And even if her job means backing the Trump administration, which in turn means going against maybe her own moral compass. I mean, at the end of the day, she has just completely brought this upon herself. The way that this has been handled from start to finish has been kind of gross, sloppy, disorganized, and at every turn just makes the Trump administration look terrible. It's crazy when you think about the fact that he ran on releasing these files. And then when he had the opportunity to start doing it, there was this huge, pony show, like, look over here, and we're going to get all these influencers and give them all this information, which turned out to be a big, huge nothing. And then you've got the Trump administration being like, we're still talking about Epstein. Like, yeah, hell yeah, we're still talking about Epstein. Get it together, put it out. Look what's happening. You have drug your feet for the past year, and the American people will not let it drop. And now you're being made to look like fools. So that is my thoughts on Pam Bondi, and I just do not think she has what it takes to be in this role. I'm sorry, but you've got to be able to sit there. One person who I see very rarely crack under pressure is Tom Homan. Even when he raises his voice a bit, he has an air of confidence in him that is just contagious, which makes you feel like no matter what you say to him, no matter what emotion you try to lead with, he's going to come at you with facts every single time. And with Pam Bondi, it's like she could use a little cup of that. She could use a cup of confidence instead of talking like such an unhinged woman who's lying, who's telling lies and covering things up and trying to turn the narrative and spin everything to be Trump derangement syndrome. Now, while I agree that there is a level of Trump derangement syndrome going on, I will say that is certainly not what's driving this from the folks on the left. All right. So what's actually in the Epstein files? Well, for anyone who doesn't know, a hell of a lot of really disturbing stuff that leadership around the globe and multi-millionaire billionaires who control things like Palantir and, oil corporations and pharma, among others, just a whole lot of really damning, disgusting things. And the fact that this was going on for so long, I really implore you guys to listen to the episode Tucker Carlson did on Jeffrey Epstein, where he really goes down the rabbit hole of how he came to be this rando dude who ended up becoming like this multi-bajillionaire controlling heads of state across the globe. The story is honestly just disgusting. And the level of pedophilia behind this story is unfathomable and just makes you sick to your stomach. So what did the release include? It included over 3 million pages of documents tied to Epstein's case. These were released per law, and Bondi's letter listed 300 plus names of prominent figures found in the documents, but inclusion in the files, ladies and gentlemen, does not imply guilt. So let me be clear. There's a lot of names in that file that weren't caught saying or doing anything crazy, but there's a whole hell of a lot that are in those files that are very damning. Very damning. So I think the thing to keep in mind is that just because somebody's name pops up in the file does not mean that they're guilty of, trafficking underage girls. Criticisms around the redaction and the privacy. So some critics argue that poor redactions exposed victim information, which harmed survivors. Now, this is true. If we're being honest, this is true. But at the same time, when you're talking about this much data, I know that there's technology out there that can absolutely redact people's names. But remember, not all of that is being done with a human eye, and computers are prone to make mistakes, or technology, I should say, is prone to make mistakes. So I just don't know that in this amount of documentation that you could successfully do that and release these things timely. And there are many survivors out there who have actually come out and told their stories. So I don't know how I feel about that. Like, for me, it's a 50-50 split where, I get that they want their identities protected, many of them probably for fear of something bad happening to them or their families, or maybe they just don't want their children to know or their spouses to know. And I get that. But this is bigger than just one survivor, right? This is literally thousands of survivors that this impacted. And so I don't know. I really feel like everything happens for a reason. but I'm not one of those victims. I'm not one of those survivors. So certainly it's easy for me to say. But, conservatives argue the DOJ protected powerful figures by over redacting and failing to release everything. And again, this is true. And, Pam Bondi tried to argue against this and saying, like, oh, it was just a mistake here or there. And while that may be true, it's like, you just got to own that. You just have to own that. We're talking about, again, millions upon millions of documents that are like awkwardly piecemealed together. If you haven't tried looking at them yourself, have a good time with that, because I tried diving in and seeing like what I could find and what I could figure out. And, it's not easy to follow along with some of these threads. So I can only imagine the amount of human beings that have had to go in and dig into these files and really like see what they could find and what they could discover. All right. Wrapping up this conversation. So, number one, Epstein bad. Whether you're on the right or you're on the left, I think we can all agree this guy was absolutely disgraceful, disgusting. I'm trying not to curse as much, so I don't know like all the words that are coming to my mind that I want to say, but I won't say. But just amongst the worst of what human beings can be. Just the worst of what human beings can be. Utter greed, utter corruption. If you're a religious person, if you're a Christian person, just truly embodies behaviors of the devil himself, quite frankly. And I am not even being dramatic. The torture, it's just unfathomable and absolutely disgusting. And I don't understand why we have to turn this into a political left versus right. Now, again, I fully embrace the fact that Trump ran on releasing these files, and it's been, quite frankly, a sloppy release of these files. And so, sorry, Trump administration, but you brought this on yourself. You brought this criticism on yourself. But I also have to laugh at all the Democrats out there, quite frankly, bitching and moaning as if any Democratic administration prior to Trump released these files or brought this into the light of the American population. Like, I don't remember Obama doing anything about this. And mind you, there were survivors already coming out and talking. And I certainly do not remember, and he probably doesn't either. Okay, bad joke. But Biden, I certainly don't remember Biden releasing anything having to do with the Epstein files. And why? Someone made a statement, and I don't know who. I need to look into this, but somewhere along the line, a statement was made that if everything was released in its entirety, everything would collapse. Now, another thing that Pam Bondi did during the hearing is she brought up the stock market. Now, full transparency, obviously I'm an investor because I feel like what other opportunity do I have to try to save for my retirement when things like pensions are non-existent these days? And so of course I'm invested in the stock market, but it's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. The market goes up, the market goes down, and Trump is like trying to ride high because the midterms are coming. Again, it all goes back to politics, ladies and gentlemen. It's never about doing the righteous thing, doing the right thing. It's like, oh, the market is doing so good. And this moron brings this up in this hearing like, oh my God, trying to get the American population to move on from Epstein and focus on, look over here, this is a good thing that's going on. Look at the stock market. Do you know what percentage of the American population is even invested in the stock market? When you have middle class America and lower class America literally living paycheck to paycheck, drowning by inflation brought on by our government overspending, do you think they give a shit about the stock market over the fact that these young ladies were trafficked and tortured? No, like they don't. And where is the moral high ground here? So that was just a humongous foul on her part. Should not have been brought up, should not have happened, and deserves all the satire and all the comedy that that's getting, because quite frankly, that was just, it was so just out of touch. Your finger is just not on the pulse of what's really going on out there and how people really feel about these Epstein files. And, when you shine a light on dark places, the cockroaches are going to scatter. And that is what's happening. So it's just very interesting because you can rest assured that the right and the left are kind of both protecting each other right now, because there's a lot of people on both sides that want none of this information to come out, and many who have already been publicly shamed or publicly humiliated. But we need to see actual criminal convictions happening on this, okay? Across the board. I don't understand how, as a population, we cannot come together on this. The fact that we are, you, us, all of us, are allowing the media to spin this into a left versus right, instead of all of us coming together and agreeing, I don't care if you're a Democrat, I don't care if you're a Republican, this is bad, something needs to happen here. That's where our focus needs to be. So enough with the propaganda, enough with the left versus right here. This stuff needs to come out. People need to be prosecuted. And if the whole damn thing falls down, if the whole house of cards comes down, then so be it. And I say that as someone with money invested in the stock market, because what goes up must come down, and eventually it will bounce back. I just don't know what else to say. But these people need to be brought to justice. All right, now let's move on to the second thing. Bad Bunny's Super Bowl halftime show versus the Turning Point USA, the culture war angle. So what actually happened? Bad Bunny headlined the Apple Music Super Bowl halftime show, performing primarily in Spanish, first for the event. His show had a huge reach. It became the fourth most watched halftime show ever, with 128.2 million viewers. Okay. One of the reasons it had so many eyeballs on it and came in fourth place, you can bet your bottom dollar it's because of the controversy. I guarantee you, people who could care less about the Super Bowl tuned in just to say that they watched Bad Bunny and supported Bad Bunny in the Super Bowl halftime show. So in my opinion, those numbers are skewed. If you could really compare the Bad Bunny viewership to people who actually care about football, or people who actually watch the Super Bowl. And I know football fans, there are a lot of non-football fans who watch the Super Bowl simply because of the spectacle that it is. It is America's game, but I guarantee you that there are millions of people who didn't even watch a second of the game, or didn't even turn it on, but turned it on at the halftime show just to get that viewership up. So there is a little bit of that, which in my opinion skews the data. What did conservatives have to say about this? All right. Language and cultural criticism. A lot of conservatives claim what did the conservatives have to say about this? Many conservatives had to jump into the fact that it was both a language and a cultural issue. Some conservatives claimed that the performance was divisive because it wasn't in English and it didn't fit their idea of traditional American entertainment. There were calls for investigations. A few Republican lawmakers even suggested looking into alleged overtly sexualized content in the performance. And another alternative TPUSA halftime show, conservative groups turned to Turning Point USA, and they said it was staged as the all-American halftime show featuring artists like Kid Rock, the only one I actually knew. What do the liberals have to say about this? Left takes. Celebration of diversity. Many Democrats and artists praised Bad Bunny's performance as a milestone for representation and cultural inclusivity. Check that box. Rejection of the backlash narrative. Many outlets and commentators argued that liberal audiences embraced the performance despite the criticism, seeing it as unity and love. And lastly, a cultural show of pride. Figures like California Governor Gavin Newsom, always ready for some clicks, praised Bad Bunny as representing broader American identity, while critics framed backlash as overreaching. All right, let me give you my thoughts on this Super Bowl halftime show. Here's some things that I thought were interesting. Now, a lot of people want to call this out as racism. What I find really funny about the halftime show is, any other country you go to, there is a high level of pride for coming from that country. Very high. I don't care if you're Colombian, Ecuadorian, Brazilian, Italian, Greek, you have a sense of pride in your nationality, your mother country, let's call it. But only in America, when you want to show American pride, are you labeled a racist. Now, here's my honest assessment. I watched both the Bad Bunny performance and the TPUSA performance. And I'm going to tell you straight up, the TPUSA performance, in my opinion, was a yawn fest. Okay. When I watch a Super Bowl halftime show performance, I want to be like up, shaking my booty, dancing, celebrating, having a good time, partying. Like it's total party mode. I do not want my Super Bowl halftime performance to be heartbreak country songs. That is certainly not what I'm going for. The reality is, the Bad Bunny performance was the better performance. Some even called it like a house party. Okay. Which that's what it felt like when I watched it. First of all, it was a very well done performance. If you have any familiarity with Spanish cultures, Hispanic cultures, Latino cultures, you know, a lot of that looked familiar, right? The dancing, the bodega, the family, you know, all of that. If you couldn't appreciate that as a rock solid entertaining performance, I don't know what to tell you. Now, maybe that's not your cup of tea and that's fine. But again, if you just look at it through the performative lens, it was way more exciting than the TPUSA one. I'm sorry, way more exciting by leaps and bounds. Now, I know a lot of people are going to lean into the fact that Kid Rock did a song with a religious undertone and asking people to dust off their Bibles. And I'm always here for that. I am always here for that. But honestly, you know, like side by side, even the performers that they had at TPUSA, like, come on, I honestly would have liked more upbeat songs. That's all I'm saying. You know, I just feel like if it's going to be, I have no problem with country music. I've actually grown to love it lately, which are words I never thought I would utter. But I just found it to be boring. I'm sorry, I just did. I found it to be boring. I liked Kid Rock's closing message at the end. I really did. But let's not get it twisted. You have all these conservatives out here talking about the halftime show as if there haven't been performers out there on that stage. It wasn't that long ago. Maybe it was just last year when Snoop Dogg was out there, 50 Cent was out there, Eminem was out there. All of these artists have sang controversial lyrics. So give me a break with the G-rated nonsense. Mick Jagger has performed at the Super Bowl halftime show, which is another funny thing because a lot of people want to talk about you know, the American citizenship component of it. Like, hello, Bad Bunny is technically an American citizen, you guys. Okay. I mean, yeah, you know, you have artists who've performed like the Rolling Stones, Paul McCartney, like you've had a lot, Shakira, you've had a lot of people perform at the Super Bowl that are not American citizens. Now, here's what I'll say about the fact that it was entirely in Spanish. And again, here's where I want to also be honest about the argument. So you can sit there and do your whole left versus right. Conservatives are racist. They just don't like Spanish people, blah, 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 blah. Let me give you a news flash. This is the reality. 75% of the American population does not speak or understand Spanish. So you can, if you're being honest with yourself, you cannot be pissed off that when somebody gets to the halftime show, even if it's an artist whose music they don't follow, when you can't even understand the words, obviously that's going to ruffle some feathers for an American sport. Now, I know that Trump recently signed an executive order making English like the language of the land. But prior to that, I want to fully call out that I believe there is nothing in existence that actually says English is the language of the land. But guys, like, let's not get into the legalities of it, right? If you're being a realist, the implication is that yes, the United States of America, the primary language is English. Everywhere you go, things are in English. Everything is written in English. You know what I'm saying? Like, actually, even globally, you'll find a lot of things written in English, even in other countries. So, like, give me a break. Be a realist here, okay? Understand that people wait all year for the Super Bowl. And when they get to the halftime show and they want to see a damn good performance and hear damn good music, if they don't understand the lyrics, and that's 75% of your population doesn't understand your lyrics, can you not see? Can you not see, like, just a little bit how that might not piss some people off or irritate some people? Now, in my mind, it's like, well, then just turn it off. Well, that's what millions of Americans did. I think anywhere between 6 and 7 million Americans were tuned into TPUSA, maybe even more. I don't know what the final number was. And you know what? That's why we have choices, right? That's why we have choices, is so that if you don't want to watch this, you can watch that. If you don't like what I'm saying, you can turn me off. If you don't like Bad Bunny, you can turn him off. Now, here's what I'll say at this point in my life, okay? Back in my 20s, I loved reggaeton music. I loved Daddy Yankee, like all these groups, okay? I loved it all. And I grew up in a very, very, very predominantly Hispanic Latino community. So I understand a lot of the lyrics. I've taken Spanish classes, right? So I understand a lot of the lyrics. I like the beat, quite frankly. I could enjoy the music. But like, the older I get, the less I do like it, if I'm being completely honest. And that's just part of life. That's just like part of growing up and evolving. I listened to a hell of a lot of raunchy rap music. I had Little Kim's first album, Foxy Brown. Like, you know, the list goes on and on. And if I listen to that stuff now, first of all, I wouldn't listen to it now. I certainly wouldn't be singing it at the top of my lungs. As a grown woman, as a mother of 2 children, like, I realize now, actually, this is going to sound so cliche, but like, I pray for those women. I really do, because to feel like you have to be that raunchy, honestly, it's like sad and demeaning to women. If we are really being honest, in no way, shape, or form does that lift women up. And neither does a lot of rap music, for that matter. But that's a topic for another day. And so, yeah, I used to listen to all that stuff, and I'd have my windows rolled down and I'd be singing every lyric and dropping every word, every curse word, and, like, out at the clubs, dancing like I was all about the music. But now at this point in my life, no, like, I wouldn't do it. Now I see it as something different. I see it as something different. And maybe I see it for what it is. And maybe that rubs people the wrong way. But, I don't care. When you know better, you do better. And so, yes, Bad Bunny does have a lot of sexually explicit lyrics, but so do many others who have come on that Super Bowl halftime show stage before him. So I am not going to hate on his performance. Again, my thoughts are it was way better than the TPUSA from an entertainment perspective, from a, like, foot tapping, like, you're gonna start, like, okay, I like this. Like, maybe I don't understand the lyrics, but the sound is good. And maybe you don't like the sound, and that's okay. Maybe you just don't like that kind of music, and that's okay. But year after year, there have been many artists who performed at the Super Bowl who have been critiqued. They were too much of a pop star, like, they just want rock and roll. Well, sorry, guys. That's just not how it goes. So change the channel, mute the TV, do what you need to do. It's so funny whenever it's like Latin women, like when it was J-Lo and Shakira, oh, everybody was drooling over that performance. But it's a male up there, and it's a whole other thing. And again, where I will say that I can understand the argument is that the entire thing was in Spanish. And so if you're being honest with yourself, you need to be able to admit that the truth of the matter is that a massive swath of the population doesn't speak or understand that language, and would therefore either not be interested in the performance or be aggravated that in America's game, we're doing a show entirely in another language. And I can see, if I'm being a reasonable person, I can see how that would piss people off. Okay. Again, just being honest. Now, if you really watch the performance all the way through, you'll see that the ending of it, most notably, was a message of unity. And that's something I want you to take away from both the TPUSA performance and the Bad Bunny performance. You know, at the end of the TPUSA one, it was very sombering, remembering there's a higher power, you know, coming together on that note. And in the Bad Bunny performance, it was like we're a cultural melting pot of nations in this country. And, you know, at least when they brought all the flags out, a lot of people want to criticize, but the very first flag that came out was the American flag, which remained front and center. So to all the haters who want to paint Bad Bunny as this big bad racist, you're being propagandized. If you really do a deeper dive, you will see that is not the case. Now, I don't support Bad Bunny's I do not support Bad Bunny's position on ICE or deportation whatsoever. I think he's very misinformed on that. But in my mind, his performance was the winner. Okay, so with that, let's try to wrap this one up. So people on both sides want to weaponize the headlights to validate whatever worldview they have rather than just seeking the truth. It's okay to have pride in your country, even when you're American. It does not make you racist as an American to take pride in your country. Every other country does it, but only when you're an American and you want to take pride in your country are you a racist or a bigot. It's completely ridiculous, and we need to understand and embrace that we need to get back to that post 9/11 world. Remember the post 9/11 world? God, I miss those days when it didn't matter what color your skin was. Well, okay. My inner Tim Dillon is reminding me that there was probably a lot of Muslim Americans, a lot of Middle Eastern originating Americans that were there was a lot of those cultures that were definitely lumped into bad guy category and probably had to deal with a lot of racism, you know, during that time. But that said, post 9/11, there was a sense of pride in this country like none I had ever felt in my lifetime. Probably much like what was felt after Pearl Harbor, probably much like what was felt after World War II. And I do not want to see this country go to another useless war with a foreign entity. But I do want to see this country unite again as one people, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is a great country. I still believe we have the ability to get back there somehow, some way, even if it is the house of cards completely imploding with the release of these Epstein files, whatever it takes. I do still believe in the founding principles of this country. And I wish that we could all come together and take pride in the country where we all live, where we are all raising our children. Walk away from these media narratives and stop being propagandized. What if we just treated truth not as a weapon, but as a pursuit? And what if we stopped reacting and started questioning all sides of every story? That's going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of What a Fuster Cluck. Please remember to like, share, subscribe, and follow the show. It's the only way we can grow and continue to get your support. Please follow me on all social media outlets, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. I'm on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. So again, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you found it balanced, realistic, and fair. Email me whatafusterclucklk@gmail.com if you have other show topics that you'd like me to talk about, guest suggestions that you'd like me to bring on, anything and all things, critique on this episode, fact checking me on something that I may or may not have said right or wrong, whatever it is, shoot me that email. I appreciate you all so much. Take care, and until next Monday.